Chapter 1. The Unlikely Arrival. The day had begun like any other. The morning sky was a dull, pale blue, the air still and quiet in the way that mornings on Earth had always been. There was no indication that today would be anything special. It was early, the sun just beginning to rise above the horizon, casting the landscape in soft hues of orange and pink, the faintest light shimmering on the dew-covered leaves of the small grove of trees that surrounded my cabin. The only sounds were the occasional bird call, the rustling of the grass as it swayed in the light breeze, and the distant hum of the city. It was peaceful, idyllic even, and I had always loved the solitude that came with living on the fringes of the colony. Life had become routine over the years. Wake up, tend to the garden, check the machinery, make sure the systems were running, and then spend the rest of the day doing whatever small repairs or improvements needed to be made. It wasn't glamorous by any stretch of the imagination, but it was quiet, and that was all I really wanted. The world around me was still healing from decades of galactic warfare, and I had long since made my peace with the fact that Earth was not the center of the universe anymore. But as I stood there, staring at the rising sun, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. It wasn't the usual sense of premonition that I'd gotten from my time as a soldier, nor was it the kind of fear that had driven me to isolate myself from the world. No, this was something different, something deeper, a pull that I couldn't explain. And then it happened. A soft cry, faint but distinct, drifted through the air and cut through the calm like a blade. It wasn't the cry of any animal I knew, nor was it the kind of sound that you would expect from the peaceful world I had made for myself. It was something else, something more human. My body stiffened, my heart rate quickened, and my mind began to race. A cry on a morning like this, in this quiet, desolate place, it didn't make sense. I turned toward the direction it came from, toward the porch of my cabin, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it might be some kind of trick of the light, a mirage brought on by exhaustion or a fleeting moment of my mind playing tricks on me, but as I took a step forward, my stomach dropped. There, on the steps of my cabin, was a small bundle, wrapped tightly in what appeared to be some sort of cloth. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, though I couldn't place exactly why. The cloth was textured, almost metallic in its sheen, and shimmered in the early morning light like something not of this world. But what truly caught my attention was the small form nestled inside the fabric, a baby, no older than a few months, its tiny chest rising and falling in shallow breaths, its small hands curled into fists against its chest. I froze in place, my breath catching in my throat. A child, but not just any child. This one wasn't human. I took a cautious step forward, my instincts, those same instincts that had once kept me alive in a galaxy filled with war and uncertainty, telling me to be cautious, to be wary. I scanned the surrounding area, my eyes searching for any sign of movement, for any clue as to who had left the child here, who had abandoned it on my doorstep. But there was nothing, just the same quiet that had filled the air before. No one in sight. No explanation. I knelt down slowly, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for the child. I unwrapped the cloth with the same care you might use with a delicate artifact, revealing the face of the infant, its eyes closed in a peaceful, almost unnatural slumber. The skin was smooth, a shade of pale blue that shimmered slightly under the light, and as I brushed a stray lock of dark hair away from its face, I could feel the faintest pulse of energy, a subtle vibration that I couldn't quite explain. The baby's features were delicate, almost ethereal, with large eyes that were slightly too big for its face, and small, pointed ears that seemed almost too perfect, too symmetrical to be human. This wasn't just any child, it was something else entirely. I swallowed hard, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of what I was looking at. An alien child, left on my doorstep, alone. The implications hit me like a wave crashing against the shore, and I found myself momentarily paralyzed by the weight of it all. I had spent so many years trying to distance myself from the galaxy's problems, from the wars that had ravaged our world, from the alien species that had fought and bled for control of this very planet. And now, here I was, alone on this quiet stretch of land, and the galaxy had found me again, this time with an infant who was clearly not from Earth. I could feel the tremor of fear running through me, but it was quickly replaced by something else, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Responsibility. My fingers brushed against the child's soft skin, and I knew, without a doubt, that I couldn't just leave it here, abandoned and alone. But I also knew that I didn't understand what I was dealing with, or why it had been left here, of all places. I looked around once more, scanning the horizon, hoping for some sort of explanation, some sign, but there was nothing. Just the vast, empty landscape of Earth, stretching out in front of me, as if it had never changed. The baby stirred slightly, letting out a small sound that tugged at my heart, and I immediately felt a surge of protectiveness I hadn't expected. This child needed care. It needed protection, and whether I understood it or not, it was now my responsibility. With a deep breath, I carefully scooped the child into my arms, feeling the warmth of its body against my chest. It was alive, it was real, and it was here. But the questions swirling in my mind only seemed to multiply. Who had left it here? Why? And what did it all mean for me, for Earth, for the galaxy? The answers didn't come, and I realized that I was left with nothing but uncertainty. But there was one thing I did know. This child wasn't just any child. It was a symbol, a message, and perhaps even a test. And the galaxy was watching. I carried the baby inside, my movements slow and deliberate, as I made my way to the small, makeshift crib I had set up in the corner of my living room. I placed the child down gently, watching as it shifted in its sleep, its small form curling into the warmth of the blankets. The room was silent, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. I stood there for a long time, unable to take my eyes off the child, my mind spinning with possibilities. There was no doubt now. My quiet, isolated life was over. What lay ahead was unknown, and I knew I had only begun to scratch the surface of what I was about to face. I didn't know who would come looking for this child, but I knew one thing for certain. They would stop at nothing to get it back. And when they came, they would find me standing at the crossroads of fate, holding the key to something far greater than I could ever have imagined. The cry of the baby still echoed in my mind, but now it was joined by something else, a deep, resonating sound, one that vibrated through my bones, one that told me the galaxy was about to change. And whatever came next, I was already a part of it. This is the beginning of Chapter 1, a detailed introduction to the protagonist's encounter with an alien child and the beginning of a much larger mystery. The rest of the chapter and the following chapters would further unfold the complexities of the situation, delving into themes of responsibility, alien encounters, and the shifting tides of the galaxy. If you'd like me to continue, I can expand the narrative further with additional character development, plot twists, and a deeper dive into the protagonist's internal conflict. The child shifted in the makeshift crib, its soft cooing pulling me back from the deep whirlpool of my thoughts. I had placed it carefully, almost reverently, ensuring its tiny body was secure, wrapped in blankets as soft as I could find. There was something so peaceful about the child in its sleep, a tranquility that seemed almost too perfect. It was as if the universe itself was forcing me to confront the reality that this small, alien being was now part of my life, whether I wanted it to be or not. I stood motionless for a long time, my mind racing with more questions than I had answers. What did it mean to be entrusted with this child? To be its protector, its guardian, in a galaxy that had already seen so much conflict and destruction? The child was more than just an orphaned infant. It was a symbol, a message. I could feel it deep in my bones. But the details were still a mystery: who had left it here, why it was here, and what role I was meant to play in this intricate puzzle. The silence in the room pressed in on me, heavy and oppressive. The soft humming of the cabin's power grid, the distant sounds of wildlife outside, it was all so ordinary, so deceptively normal, as if nothing had changed. But I knew that I had crossed a line. I had taken something into my care that had the potential to change everything, not just for me, but for Earth, for humanity, for the entire galaxy. I glanced at the small data pad resting on the table nearby, and for the first time, the thought crossed my mind that I might need to call someone, reach out for help. Perhaps I could get in touch with the colony's authorities, or even the Galactic Council, though that seemed almost laughable in the face of what I was holding. A child left by a Zinther emissary? An unknown alien race. They would want answers, no doubt, but would they trust me with those answers? The Zinther, especially, were a mystery in their own right. Mysterious, powerful, and elusive, they had avoided most direct contact with Earth. The idea that one of their children had been abandoned at my door seemed absurd. Why me? Of all the places in the galaxy, why this secluded corner of Earth? The possibilities rattled through my mind, each one darker and more complex than the last. A sudden sound broke my thoughts, a soft, sharp knock at the door. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but as I stood frozen in place, it came again, louder this time, more insistent. My body reacted before my mind could even catch up, my hand already reaching for the old blaster I kept hidden beneath the kitchen counter, a habit that never quite left me, no matter how peaceful life on Earth had become. The knock persisted, rapid and urgent, and it became clear that whoever or whatever was on the other side was not there for casual conversation. I moved toward the door cautiously, the baby's quiet breathing still echoing in the back of my mind. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air, and I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of something much bigger than I could comprehend. I had no doubt that this wasn't an ordinary knock. Whoever was out there knew about the child. They had to. With a deep breath, I opened the door, but I was met with an unexpected sight. Standing at the threshold was a woman. She was tall, far taller than any human I had encountered before, with dark hair that cascaded down her back in waves, and skin that shimmered faintly, like the surface of water under a moonlit sky. Her eyes were striking, large and golden, with irises that glowed faintly, like stars. She was not of this world, not even close, and there was no mistaking it. She was Zinther, though her features were more delicate, more ethereal than any of the others I had seen from a distance. And she wasn't alone. In her arms, cradled against her chest, was another child the same as the one I had just placed in the crib. Her eyes met mine with a quiet intensity, a mixture of urgency and something deeper, more sorrowful. The moment she saw me, her gaze softened, and for a fleeting second, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition. "You have the child," she said, her voice soft but carrying an edge of undeniable authority. "I need you to give it back." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I knew, without needing to be told, that this wasn't a simple request. This was an order, veiled in desperation. The Zinther woman's eyes didn't waver as she looked past me into the cabin, her gaze quickly scanning the room, no doubt seeking out the infant she had left on my doorstep. But I could see something more behind her eyes, something that hinted at the fear, the brokenness that had driven her to make such an extreme decision. "You left it on my doorstep?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why?" The woman seemed taken aback by my words, as though the question itself was unexpected. For a moment, she said nothing, her lips parting as if she were searching for the right way to respond. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had no choice. They are coming for it. The council, the ones who wish to use her. I couldn't let them." She hesitated, her voice faltering, and for the first time, I saw her face soften, a look of sheer terror crossing her features. "She's more than just a child. You must understand that. She is the key to something much larger than you or I can comprehend. If they get to her, they will change the balance of the galaxy." I blinked, unsure of how to respond. The weight of her words settled heavily on my chest. The council? The galaxy? What was this woman talking about? And why had she chosen me, of all people, to be the one to protect this child? I was just a farmer, a hermit living on the fringes of civilization. The idea that I could be a part of something so monumental, something so intricately woven into the fabric of the galaxy's fate, was beyond anything I had ever imagined. "I can't give her back," I said, my voice resolute, though doubt gnawed at me from within. "She's under my protection now." The Zinther woman's eyes flickered with a mixture of desperation and something else, perhaps relief, though I couldn't be sure. "You don't understand. This child, she is not just a life. She is the last of an entire species, and the power she carries with her can alter the course of history. If the wrong people get their hands on her, it will be the end of everything." Before I could ask her anything else, before I could process the gravity of her words, a sound rang out in the distance, an unmistakable hum of ships entering the atmosphere, a low-frequency vibration that made the ground tremble slightly beneath my feet. I knew, without a doubt, that those ships were not from Earth. They were here for the child. "They found us," the Zinther woman whispered, her voice shaking. "We don't have much time." Chapter 2, The Pursuit. The moment those words left the Zinther woman's mouth, the world around me seemed to shift, as though reality itself was warping under the pressure of what was happening. The ships in the distance low to the ground, cloaked under the fading light of dusk, moved quickly, their forms emerging from the atmosphere like predators drawn to the scent of prey. They were sleek, military vessels, and their designs were unmistakable. These were no ordinary ships. These were the kinds of crafts used by the Zinther military, a species known for their technological superiority and brutal efficiency. The woman's eyes locked onto mine, her fear now palpable, radiating off her like a wave. You need to hide her. They'll come for both of you. I didn't have time to think. I moved quickly, instinctively, to the crib where the baby was still sleeping, undisturbed by the chaos around it. The cabin suddenly felt too small, too vulnerable. I had always imagined that if danger ever came to my doorstep, I would be ready for it. I had survived wars and battles, survived betrayals and lost friends, but nothing had prepared me for this. Nothing had prepared me for being the guardian of an alien child who was more important than anything I had ever known. You'll need to take her into the caves, the Zinther woman said, her voice low but urgent. It's the only place they won't find her. There's a network of tunnels underneath the old colony ruins. You have to go now. I hesitated, looking at her, the weight of what she was asking me to do sinking in. You're not coming? I cannot, she said, her voice trembling. They will have followed my signal. They know I'm here. You are the only one who can protect her now. You have to get her to safety. Her words hit me like a blow, and in that moment, I knew she was right. There was no time. I had to move. I grabbed the baby carefully, cradling it close to my chest, and turned toward the door. But before I could leave, the Zinther woman stopped me, her hand resting gently on my arm. Thank you, she whispered, her voice soft with gratitude. You have no idea what you've just stepped into. But I believe you are the only one who can save her. With a final glance at the woman who now seemed to disappear into the shadows, preparing for the inevitable confrontation, I stepped outside into the cold air, my eyes already scanning the horizon. The hum of the ships grew louder, the sound of their engines shaking the very ground beneath my feet. I didn't look back. The child needed me, and I would do whatever it took to keep her safe. What lay ahead was a journey I couldn't predict, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose. And as I turned toward the caves, the distant rumble of approaching ships was the only sound that filled my ears. This continues the story's first chapter and sets the stage for the chase, the hidden dangers, and the unknowns that will unfold in the coming chapters. The protagonist, now thrust into an intergalactic conflict, must confront his new role as protector while navigating the hidden dangers of the galaxy. I moved quickly, my heart pounding as the Zinther woman's words echoed in my mind. You have to get her to safety. There was no time for hesitation. I couldn't afford to question what she had told me, nor could I afford to consider the consequences. The ships, those sleek, deadly Zinther military vessels, were getting closer. The deep hum of their engines vibrated through the air, shaking the earth beneath my feet, and I could already hear the whine of their weapons systems powering up, ready to deploy their destructive force. If they found me here, with the child in my arms, there would be no hope. They would take her, and whatever plans they had would unfold without interference. The caves. I didn't know much about them, just that the Zinther woman had mentioned them as a safe haven, a hidden refuge beneath the ruins of the old colony. The ancient structures had been abandoned years ago, left to decay and crumble into dust, but I had heard whispers about tunnels that ran deep beneath the surface, unknown to the general population. It seemed almost too perfect, too convenient. But there was no time for doubt. I had no choice. The baby needed to be kept safe, and if these ruins were the only place where she might be hidden from the Zinther forces, then they were my only option. I cradled the child close to my chest, keeping her warm, her tiny body surprisingly light despite the strength of her unknown heritage. Her skin, blue and shimmering in the dim light, felt almost alive against my own, as though she were a living beacon that could not be extinguished. It was both a comfort and a curse. I was running, not just for my life, but for hers as well. The sound of the ships grew louder, their engines now almost deafening, and I knew they were too close. My pulse quickened, and a sense of urgency washed over me. I couldn't run forever. I had to find the entrance to the caves, and I had to find it now. I moved toward the back of the cabin, past the worn-out furniture and the rusted farming tools that lay discarded in the corners of the room. The back door opened with a creak, and the cold night air hit me like a wall. There was nothing but darkness outside, but I knew the direction I had to go. I had seen the remnants of the old colony ruins from a distance, towering broken structures, long abandoned by their original inhabitants, now little more than crumbling stone and rusting metal. The ground beneath my feet was uneven, rocky, and treacherous, but I forced myself to keep moving, knowing that behind me, the Zinther ships were closing in. I didn't dare look back. The sounds of the engines grew louder, and the feeling that I was being hunted crawled up my spine like a predator stalking its prey. I had to reach the ruins before they found me. The caves were my only hope. The colony ruins rose before me, jagged and skeletal against the dark sky. They were eerily quiet, the only sound the faint crunch of gravel underfoot as I hurried toward them. The wind had picked up, carrying with it the scent of the earth, and for a moment, it almost felt like a reminder of home, of the peace I had known. But that peace was gone, replaced by the cold, harsh reality of the galaxy's endless struggles. The child in my arms was a part of that struggle now, and I had to protect her, no matter the cost. I reached the base of the ruins and began to search for the entrance. My eyes scanned the stone walls, looking for any sign of a hidden passage, a doorway, anything that would lead me underground. The ships were close now, their lights flickering overhead, casting long, shifting shadows across the broken remains of the buildings. I moved quickly, desperation flooding my veins, knowing that time was running out. There, a faint outline in the stone. A hidden door, barely visible, covered by moss and creeping vines. I approached it cautiously, my fingers brushing the cool surface, feeling for any mechanism that would allow it to open. My heart raced as the sound of the ships grew deafening, their low, pulsating hum reverberating through the ground. A soft click. The door shifted slightly, revealing a narrow, dark passage leading downward into the earth. I hesitated for a moment, looking back toward the ruins above me, where the Zinther ships hovered, their presence like an oppressive weight in the sky. I didn't know if the caves would truly protect us, but it was the only option I had. I stepped into the darkness, pulling the door closed behind me. The passage was narrow and winding, the air cool and musty with the scent of damp earth. I moved cautiously, my steps echoing in the silence, the faint glow from the baby in my arms the only light in the oppressive darkness. The walls of the tunnel were rough, jagged rock, and as I descended deeper, I couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient lay hidden beneath the surface. This place felt old, forgotten, and yet there was something strangely comforting about it. The Zinther would not give up easily, I knew that much. They would search the surface, they would track us down, and they would stop at nothing to find the child. But for now, I had managed to get away. The darkness of the caves seemed to hold some kind of promised safety, or at least a brief respite from the storm above. But I couldn't stay here forever. I had to figure out what to do next, how to keep the child safe, and how to learn the truth behind her presence on Earth. Who had sent her here? Why? And why had she been abandoned at my doorstep? The answers seemed just out of reach, but the one thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't face this alone. Chapter 3. The Secrets Beneath. The tunnel stretched on for what seemed like miles, each step taken in darkness, each turn leading deeper into the unknown. The air was cooler now, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the cabin I had just fled. The deeper I went, the more the tunnel seemed to close in around me, the walls narrowing and the air growing thick and damp. My breath came in short gasps, my body straining against the weight of the child in my arms, though I refused to stop. I couldn't stop. Not now. The baby had remained silent since we entered the tunnel, its golden eyes now closed in peaceful slumber. I couldn't understand why it was so calm, why it hadn't reacted to the danger that had followed us into the caves. Perhaps, I thought, it was too young to understand. Or perhaps it knew something I didn't. I wasn't sure. The child's presence was as mysterious as everything else that had happened. There were so many questions, but they seemed to drift further and further away as I moved deeper into the earth. The further I went, the more I began to feel as though I was being drawn somewhere. The tunnel seemed to lead me with an unnatural pull, like some invisible force guiding me down its winding path. I couldn't explain it, but it was as if the walls themselves were whispering, urging me forward. And then I saw it. A faint light in the distance, flickering like a dying flame. It was small at first, just a glimmer in the dark, but as I moved closer, it grew brighter, clearer, until I reached a large, open cavern. The light was coming from what appeared to be an ancient structure, a ruin so old it seemed to have been buried by time itself. Stone walls, worn and weathered, rose up from the ground, their surfaces etched with markings I couldn't decipher. The light emanated from a large, circular platform in the center of the cavern, pulsing faintly like the heartbeat of the earth itself. I approached cautiously, my heart racing, and as I did, I felt a strange warmth emanating from the platform. It was as though the air itself was charged with energy, and the closer I got, the more the hairs on my arms stood on end. The child in my arms stirred, its tiny body shifting as though it sensed the change in the atmosphere. I felt its golden eyes flicker open, and for a moment, it looked at me, not with the innocence of a baby, but with a knowing look that seemed to pierce right through me. Without thinking, I stepped onto the platform, my foot making contact with the cool, ancient stone. The moment I did, a sudden surge of energy shot through me, and I gasped as a wave of information alien, incomprehensible flooded my mind. It was as if the platform itself had come alive, transmitting a message straight into my consciousness. The Zinther child in my arms let out a soft cry, and in that moment, everything became clear. This was no ordinary child. This was a beacon, a key to something far beyond anything I could imagine. The galaxy had been waiting for this moment for the child to come into the hands of someone worthy. And somehow, by sheer luck or fate, it had fallen to me. But now, the real questions began. What was I supposed to do with this child? And what would the galaxy demand in return? The pulsing light grew brighter, and the cavern seemed to come alive around me. A voice, soft and ethereal, echoed in my mind, as though it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Protect her, for she is the last hope. And in that moment, I realized that this was only the beginning. This chapter sets the stage for the deeper mysteries surrounding the alien child, the Zinther Empire, and the protagonist's unexpected role in the galaxy's fate. As the protagonist navigates the underground ruins and begins to understand the child's importance, the true weight of his responsibility becomes clear. The story will continue to evolve as secrets unfold and new threats emerge. The pulse of energy that flooded my mind was overwhelming, almost suffocating in its intensity. My heart raced, and I staggered back as if struck by an invisible force, my legs weak beneath me. The child in my arms began to squirm, its golden eyes now wide and aware, filled with a knowing intensity that sent a chill down my spine. The strange voice that had echoed through my mind soft, like the whisper of the wind, yet carrying the weight of millennia lingered in my thoughts. Protect her, for she is the last hope. The cavern around me seemed to hum with a life of its own. The light emanating from the platform pulsated with an energy that felt ancient, as though it had been waiting for centuries for someone to step onto it. The stone beneath my feet was cold and rough, but it thrummed with power now, the air thick with a charge that I could almost taste. The walls of the cavern, adorned with carvings that seemed to shift and change before my eyes, were alive with mystery, each symbol a riddle that I couldn't decipher. They seemed to tell a story, one of deep sorrow and loss, of a civilization long gone, of a power that had been sealed away, only to resurface now, in this moment. The child in my arms shifted again, its tiny fingers stretching outward, almost reaching for the platform. I glanced down at it, unsure of what was happening. There was something about this place, something about the child, that seemed to draw the very life force from me, as if I were tethered to something far beyond my understanding. The soft whisper in my mind, protect her, was not a simple request. It was a command, a burden placed upon me by forces I couldn't comprehend. I turned my attention back to the glowing platform, the pulsing light now a beacon that seemed to call to me, beckoning me to step closer. There was no more time for hesitation. I had come this far, and now I could sense the truth of it all. The child, this being not of Earth, was the key to something greater, a power long forgotten, a force that could alter the course of history. But I was not the only one who had sensed this. The Zinther forces, the ones who had tracked us to this very place, would stop at nothing to claim the child for themselves. Their interest in her was not one of compassion or care, it was a pursuit of control, of power that could tip the balance of the galaxy. I had to act. There was no other choice. I held the child close to me, the warmth of its small body a reminder of everything I had come to care about in these few short days. Its tiny hand gripped my shirt, as if it too understood the gravity of the moment. The air around us seemed to crackle, and I could feel the weight of history pressing down upon me. The Zinther ships would be searching for us now. They were already searching for us. They would come to this place, to the heart of the ancient ruins, and they would take her. They would use her. But I would not let that happen. With a final, determined breath, I stepped onto the platform once more, my foot pressing down firmly. The light around me flared, bright and blinding, and I felt an overwhelming surge of energy flood my body. The child in my arms began to glow, its skin shimmering with an ethereal light that illuminated the cavern. I stumbled slightly, the force of the energy almost knocking me off balance, but I held tight to the child, determined not to let her go. And then, the voice returned, louder now, resonating in my very bones. You are the protector. You are the one who will change the future. But beware, for the forces that will seek to claim her will stop at nothing. The words echoed in my mind, and I felt the weight of their meaning pressed down upon me. I was no longer just a man hiding from his past, no longer a soldier trying to live a quiet life. I had been chosen. The galaxy was watching, and the child was the key to everything. As the platform's light dimmed, I knew there was no turning back. The power had been activated, and the path forward was now set. But there was no time to dwell on what lay ahead. The Zinther would come soon, and I would need every ounce of strength I had to protect her. I turned and made my way toward the far side of the cavern, where a small opening led deeper into the network of tunnels. The child's glow had faded, but the energy I had felt earlier still lingered in the air, a reminder that something profound had just occurred. The child was special. I didn't know why, but I knew it to be true. There was a destiny that awaited her, and I was bound to it now, bound to her. The echoes of the Zinther ships continued to vibrate through the stone walls, their hum now a distant but growing threat. They were closing in. But the child's presence, her quiet warmth against me, gave me strength. I wasn't alone in this. And as I moved deeper into the caves, I realized that whatever came next, I would face it with her. I would protect her, and together, we would find the answers to the questions that had begun to surface in the wake of her arrival. Chapter 4: The Awakening. The further we ventured into the labyrinth of tunnels, the more I began to feel the weight of my responsibility. The Zinther forces were too close, and I could feel their presence looming over us like a storm on the horizon. Their ships, their advanced technology, were more than a match for anything Earth had to offer. If they caught us, it wouldn't be just the child they would take everything. They would strip the galaxy of its freedom, of its hope, and they would use her to do it. But there was still a way to protect her. The caves, the ancient ruins we had entered, held secrets far older than the Zinther themselves. The child, I had come to realize, was not just a symbol of hope. She was a weapon of unimaginable power, one that could either save the galaxy or destroy it. The Zinther had known this for centuries. They had been waiting for this moment, for the child to be born, and now they would do everything in their power to claim her. As we navigated the narrow passages, the tunnel walls grew tighter, the air colder, and the darkness seemed to close in around us. The faint glow of the child's skin was our only light, casting strange, shifting shadows against the rough stone walls. I felt a strange sense of purpose, as if the child's presence was guiding me, pushing me forward. I wasn't sure how, but it felt as if I was being led somewhere important, somewhere that held the answers to everything. We reached a vast chamber, larger than any space I had encountered before. The air was thick with dust, and the floor was uneven, covered with the remnants of long-forgotten machinery. It was clear that this place had once been a hub of activity, a center of power that had long since fallen into ruin. But there was still a faint pulse of energy here, a hum that vibrated through the walls, like the heartbeat of the very earth beneath my feet. The child in my arms stirred, its small fingers twitching as if it sensed something ahead. I looked down at it, unsure of what was happening, but the moment I made eye contact with those golden eyes, I knew. She was ready. She had awakened. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath my feet, and the walls of the cavern began to shift. The ancient machinery that had long since fallen silent hummed to life, its systems coming online, powered by the energy the child had unlocked. The symbols on the walls, those strange, alien markings, began to glow, their meanings shifting in my mind, as if they were speaking directly to me. A voice, distant but clear, echoed through the chamber. "You have awakened the key. The power is yours to wield." The words hit me like a wave, and I staggered back, almost dropping the child in my arms. What was happening? Was this the destiny I had been chosen for? To wield this power? To protect it from those who would use it for destruction? Before I could process it further, I heard it, the unmistakable hum of Zinther ships overhead. They had found us. The child had activated something in this ancient place, something that had been dormant for centuries, and now the Zinther would stop at nothing to take it from us. I turned toward the glowing platform, the heart of the chamber. There was no time left to think, no time left to run. The Zinther were coming, and they would be here any second. I knew what I had to do. With the child in my arms, I moved toward the platform, the only thing that could stop the Zinther. The power surged through me, through the child, and I knew that this was the moment. This was the turning point. The galaxy would never be the same. The Zinther would come, yes, but they wouldn't take her. Not today, not while I was still breathing. And so, I made my stand. The chamber around me seemed to vibrate with energy as I placed the child on the platform. The light grew, brighter than ever before, and I knew in that moment that the galaxy had just been changed forever. And whatever happened next, I would face it with the child, my responsibility, my duty, my hope for the future. The future of the galaxy now rested in our hands.